Did you know it has been 11 years and today is episode
1500?
They can't see that. You're blocking my view. What's up, guys? Can you believe it? Today is a huge day for me. On November 5th, 2008, I posted my very first episode of RC Adventures right here on YouTube. Can you imagine that? 11 years later, here I am today, on this day, by coincidence, posting episode 1500. It all started back with the MGT, episode 1, November 5th, 2008. Well, today, that's the 11th month, the 5th day. Here we are, 11 years later, working on the LESU KOBELCO excavator. The build is now complete. I want to show you because there's a lot of things I got to catch you up to speed on with this to where I got it into a good working order. And I think we should just dive right in. Now let's start off by talking about all of the amazing things I love about this model. First and foremost, look at all of the scale accessories that are on here. There are mirrors everywhere, the exhaust coming up through the stack there, the pre-filter, the other mirror, everything about this right on into the inside interior where you've got lots of little scale things for your driver. Hey, Brooder guy. The other thing I love, the rams. These don't have any kind of pin system right here that you have to tighten up and worry about any leakage. In fact, all of this, it looks well brazed, and the lines, you know, there's minimal plastic lines on there for them to get damaged or worn out. Look at this. Look at the way that the actual ram itself is constructed. And everybody was asking, what's with all the extra lines that are running down here? And these ones are basically being prepared for scale accessories, like if I wanted to install a thumb on this later, which I would love to see. That is a plan I would like to see on this, is to install a thumb or a jackhammer of some sort where I could bust apart some stone or brick or something like that that's run by hydraulics. The main slew on here, how what I would call the turret turns around, there's absolutely no slop at all. And I'm going to give you an example of that a little later on. The drive sprockets, the inline motors, if you guys watched the build assembly of this in the series I did, you'll see that it's got inline motors in here that help drive this cogwheel or drive back here. The rollers, all the bearings, everything set in. These tracks were kick butt, man. I loved them all the way around. And of course, here's where the tank goes for the hydraulics underneath. And even more, you can see there's those lines. What a nice machine. So I'm going to give you an example of how it moves around, and you can see it's real first time smooth motion, but there is a little trick photography to this, so I'll explain in a moment. Alrighty, let's fire her up. I don't have a sound kit installed, so there is no real sound, but I've done all the mixing to the pump. There we go. Still getting used to the control speed. Watch when I turn the slew. Precise movement. Track motion. Nice and fast. Okay, let's bring that down. I did paint the tracks, so I expect to see a little wear on them over time. I believe you hear one track clicking just because of the paint hasn't worked in yet. Still working on my bucket curl. Let me see if I get that reversed. Is that better? That's better. I just had my curl reversed. I knew something wasn't right there. So smooth. It sounds like it's got plenty of power as well. Weight-wise, feels pretty good. Depends on the battery you have in there, of course. But the back weight, it feels like we're going to be able to do some work. Now you'll notice that my door is open there. I'll get to that in a few minutes. But let's get everybody excited for loading wars here and load up on the trailer. And of course, if you guys don't know what Loading Wars is, there is another channel we have called RC Sparks Reboot, where we did a show last winter about loading up different trucks and trailers and stuff. And we are getting ready for this year's Loading Wars. Whoa! Move the whole truck. There we go. I almost got myself a penalty. A little show humor for those that are familiar. A little bit far over. So there you go. Now you've got to see it move around. It's nice and quiet. It's actually quite agile. Same kind of track style as the 4200, so a little bit on the slippery side, but with a little good stick management and some good driving, getting it up onto this older style of trailer. Geez, this trailer's got to be at least 8 years old. Is a challenge, but still doable. And of course, we'd be able to pull this model. Now, let's go over a few of the things that I found while building the model, and hopefully some of the tips and tricks and alerts that you guys may want to have if you're building it as well. Just watch this when I turn. When I go to stop, no slop at all. Great transmission. I love that. That's something in the RC four-wheel drive 4200 that was really frustrating, is that you really couldn't get any precise movements. But look at this. The gear ratio is just amazing. Awesome. Okay, let's get to what I think could have been improved. Some of these things are going to be pretty minor. Now, I know we already talked about the mirror in the last episode, but no matter what we did between the two mirrors, either rotating them or flipping them back and forth, they were just done wrong. A lot of people were saying that you would think that it was, you know, it looked like a great scale accessory because it had bumped into things, but for me, it just looked wrong. So that was an issue. The other thing is that they tried to include magnets in here to help the doors close, but the magnets that came in the kit, they were actually too large to fit in the holes. And so we found that with a few of the things is that they paid really great close attention to detail, like this small door handle clasp, but it doesn't really do anything. But when we compare it to having a magnet here to help close the door, it just wasn't there, you know? Another scale thing that I really loved, like these little steps and being able to take out all these pieces and paint them to make it accent, you know, like these little brass hinges. Epic. I love these kind of things. But like I said, even though I love these opening doors,
excavators like this take a lot of power to run. There's a lot of servos, a lot of ESCs. There's 3-4 ESCs just running this machine. Getting a battery in here that has a right amount of milliamp hours to it definitely is essential, and these smaller doors with the big bracket in the way makes it more of a challenge. But that's not a deal breaker for me. You'll also notice that we discussed a lot about these scale accessories that it came with, but you'll notice here this almost looks like the end of a GoPro camera mount. It is. The piece that was supposed to come here wasn't anywhere in the bag. It looked a lot like that one right there, but it just wasn't in my kit. So we looked everywhere, we couldn't find it, but instead of having an empty stack position, we put that in. I'd like to say that the windows and the mirrors, everything went in perfectly, and the mirrors didn't, but the windows did. This is interesting that they had a large Lexan window on the outside, or whatever plastic that is, but a very small opening here. Let's get that back into focus. There we go. But it still looks awfully darn good. Now, here is the big camera magic, where you guys are all going to be like shocked in a moment here. When I open up this side, you'll see that there is a bit of a change. Where's the pump? Where is everything that we installed? Now, I'm going to show you that in a moment, but first I have to undo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 screws. Hold on. Now, before I move this whole top plate here, let's open this up so you can have a look. Ta-da! What the heck? For those that followed the build video, this isn't going to make any sense to you at all, especially when I remove the entire top and we have a zoom back and we have a look at what we're looking at. Okay, so for me to be less cryptic and more explanation right here, here is a new servo block. This whole new setup in here, this pump, the motor, the pump, look at this, the pressure gauge, there is an oil fill reservoir, like this whole thing is a tank, and it actually gives me a nice clear plastic tube on the side to show me how much oil is in here. Now, for the last episode we had of this build, where it was released part 5, I gotta say that 4 of us worked on this machine. Even though it was a 25-minute video, we worked on the hydraulics in this machine for approximately 8 hours trying to figure out what the heck was going on. Now, there's a few different things in here I want to discuss. Number 1, this is the manual. You're going to see tons of hydraulic fluid all over this. You guys will be laughing at the amount of issues that I had to have taking this apart and putting it back together again. And what am I talking about? Well, the manual is great at showing you pictures for almost 95% of the entire thing. What am I talking about? Now, don't freak out. I know this is to an extreme, and this was after 48 hours of me trying to troubleshoot it afterwards. Here is the entire hydraulic system out of the LESU excavator, okay? This is the tank. This is the tank that comes, that is in this forward part that was underneath here, which now is empty and just has some residual hydraulic fluid in there. We'll get to that in a minute. This is the pump, this is the pressure gauge, this is the brushless motor, this is the hydraulic block where all the fluid goes from the pump into the block. It controls the different valves for the rams, and then it all comes back through into this oil cooler that is supposed to have this fan on it on the other side, and then it goes straight through this small tube back to the tank. Notice the feeder tube is quite large and the return tube is quite small, which is under pressure, by the way, so not a big deal, but still an area that I want to discuss. One of the things that was in the last video in episode 5 was all of my friends had gone home. You guys didn't know the amount of frustration we had that day trying to figure it out. Working with the ESC speed, working with the motor speed, working with the endpoint adjustments for the valves on the servos. I've probably lost half of my viewers right now, guys. I know 1,500 might be the ultimate boring video. Let me know. Smash that like button right now if you're watching that, man, because the dedication to the show is heavy. Now, look at this. When I first discovered this, this had a screw in it, and this had the feeder valve or the feeder pipe right there. But this had a close-off screw. But finally, after my friends had left and I did a little bit more research, only by staring at one of the random pictures in here that actually showed right there, boom. There was never at any point in the instructions did it ever say to install this piece right here. In fact, when you go all the way through to the beginning, when it lists the pieces, it actually shows the block and everything with it in already, like it was supposed to come from the factory. So I thought for sure we were having pressure issues, and we were. And when I replaced this, I thought this was definitely going to give me more control over the pressure valve. Now I'm wondering overall if we had damaged this in the beginning, but there's really not a lot to damage in this, okay? The way it works, there's not a lot to damage except maybe a few seals here and there. Now we moved this out of the way, and what you're going to see here is like a pin, that little pin, and there is a spring on the inside. Basically, it's a close-off valve that increases and decreases the pressure. Every time I tried to use the hydraulics on this machine, we were having maximum pressure going up here, and this electronic motor, so many of you noticed, of course, even in the comment section, one fella said, I could feel the heat from here, because the amount of resistance we were having here was an issue. Now, we also noticed with these valve blocks that if you turned it too far, it would start to close the valve. Not only would it go from the closed to the open position, but it would also start to close off the valve. So we thought, okay, we'll adjust the endpoints on here. We'll adjust the ESC, the electronic speed control, and put this down to like 20% to see if we could get it just to give us a little bit of pressure. And we also thought about mixing, where we were mixing the control of the arm and the bucket. Let me focus, the arms and the bucket, that it would only, because there's no relief valve here, that it would only fire up this motor when I was calling for action on any of these arm or bucket pieces. Now, I know that was complicated, guys. Thank you for sticking with me as I tried to explain that, because a lot of you are going to have suggestions into what this might be. And I got to say, I wanted to eliminate a lot of them right away by letting you guys know what we did. Now, of course, I finally, after 48 hours of messing around and changing mixes and changing the offset of my mixes, getting into every kind of mix I could figure out, there was no way that I could get this to actually do any better. And I want you to know that I went through the instructions on the lines to the ultimate key, right down to I repiped everything. I made sure the flow was correct. We weren't having any kind of locking issues flowing back and forth, but I swear that there was some issue in the block. You'll notice, and one of my friends noticed as well, that the block is feeding and returning on the same side. Normally a block feeds and returns on two separate sides, but the instructions show like this. So I don't know exactly what the problem was, except this was getting extremely loud. We were getting way too much pressure on the return. Anytime we would try to open the valve, not use the motor, and like move the ram to try to move the fluid, there would be some sort of lock. Now we might think, hey, air lock, that's what's going on. You had air in your lines. No, we actually, with this hole right here, we were bleeding air from the lines the entire time. And so I would even left it overnight just to let with all the rams collapse to get all the air out of there, and then try to seal this up, which you can't seal up because it's a breather hole in case you have like expansion. And the issue continued to haunt me. So I decided to say, forget. I pulled out the old block. You'll see a draw and return tube on either side. There's 3 micro servos that are controlling the block now. We have this is how this whole unit right here is an adjustment, a pressure relief valve, which is hooked up now to my proper pressure gauge right there. And like I said, I can see how much fluid is in there. Sorry for all the out of focus issue, guys. There's a lot for the camera to look at. And I demonstrated it for you here today. Now my concern is that I went, and I believe LESU would warranty an issue like this, but this is such a rogue issue that when I went and tried to move fluid through this cooler right here, I can move fluid. So I didn't have an issue where it was like the hole was too small or whatever. The only thing I could think of is that this return line is so restrictive that every time we were trying to get something back in there, it was just impeding the flow somehow. And that's why no matter what we did, even with the pin all the way out, I was still having issues. So if I find out more about this, I will let you know. But I wanted to let you know this was my experience. I don't think this is everybody's experience because LESU has been in the biz a long time. And I'm sure I could have got this working more if I would have troubleshot it, but I already had the pieces to go in here. And as you can see, with very little mixing, very little offsets, it was very easy to get this to move much smoother and more effectively. So I'm going to troubleshoot this a little bit more because this is a great system to have, of course, in a different rig. Maybe I can use this in an upcoming adventure. But guys, there you go. I hope you have enjoyed this insane, incredible build. The quality of it overall, I've got to give this, at least an 8 out of 10. I'm really surprised on how, when the pump and everything is working, how there is no leaking points on it, how the slew moves super well, and how those drive motors in the tracks, they just keep on going. They've got lots of torque. So guys, thank you for joining me on this very special episode. Thank you for checking out our build on the unique KOBELCO. It's supposed to be a Komatsu. In fact, it was supposed to be a PC360. That is the kit from LESU. I've had tons of great stuff from LESU. Don't let this sway you. I just wanted to let you know because maybe if I would have known about this little brass thing in the beginning, maybe we wouldn't have had an issue. But regardless, hey, it's fixed now. We got a great excavator. We'll see you in the next episode of RC Adventures, guys. Now get outside, have fun with RC. I always do. Bye for now.